Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Wednesday webinar, where the wisdom being dispensed is from one of my favourite festival buddies. Always brings a smile to my face and is a bit of a legendary activist with many different campaigns and groups, but particularly also with Disabled People Against Cuts. This lady has been on the front line of change and raising awareness with so many people, and taking her sculpture about what's going on for the community that she's part of and we're all part of. There are many petals to the lotus, many petals to the daisy, as Mary Ellen's going to tell us. So she's absolutely been on the front line of many actions to raise awareness about what's going on. So without too much further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Mary Ellen from Disabled People Against Cuts, thank you so much for coming. You're over. Tell us about the great things you've been doing. You're a star. We love you.
Oh, thank you so much, Phoenix. And thank you everyone else for being here. I'm as Phoenix said, I'm involved with so many different campaigns because I see each of those as petals of the same daisy. I see all of humanity as petals of the same daisy. I see all of life as petals of the same daisy. And I see that the people who are behind the democide in this country, the ecocide across the world, the genocide in Palestine and elsewhere around the planet, are all the same people, and for the same reasons of greed, of money, of an insatiable greed for power. They are so blinded by their greed that they don't understand that when the seas rise, they rise for them as well. When the planet dies, it dies for them as well. But they've depended on division and inequality to be able to maintain power in the hands of the few, to exploit and enslave and colonize the many. So my personal feeling is that they divide, so we need to unite. They depend on hate, so we need to use love. And when they divide, it's not just dividing between nations, between sexes, between genders. It's even dividing us on causes. And so we have campaigns and charities fighting for funding, fighting each other for little pots of funding, going, my cause is more important than yours. And as soon as we stand for just one cause, one issue, we've fallen into the trap of divide. Divide to conquer, divide to enslave, divide to exploit, divide to colonize, just divide. And so when people invariably ask me, well, how do we stand for it all when I'm already so depleted just standing for the one? It's taking all my time, it's taking all my energy, it's taking everything I've got to just stand for the dolphins, or just stand for disabled people, or just stand for Palestine, or just stand for whichever issue it is that we're standing for. But that's what they depend on. They depend on us being divided, because when we're divided, it's easy to knock us over. It's easy to, while we're looking in one direction, for them to do something else. So while everyone's looking at Gaza, in the rest of Palestine, the settlers are moving in and doing even worse than they've ever done before. And this is the issue, that we need to be able to look at the much bigger picture and refuse to be divided, refuse to just look at the one issue. I'm disabled, but before I was disabled, I was a nurse. I was an NHS nurse, and I care passionately about NHS, about what's happening to our NHS. I care passionately about disabled rights and the number of disabled people, hundreds of thousands of disabled people literally being killed off in plain sight. So when this government is starting to kill and support genocide in Palestine, what people don't realize is they started killing off babies over here. The infant mortality has been rising over here. The homeless people, the number of homeless people and the life expectancy of homeless people, just when we've got a government that can vote to leave hungry children hungry in their own country, it's not a big step for them to bomb Palestinian children and not bat an eyelid. And it's only when we see that all of it is interconnected, we're all Palestinians, we're all Assange, we're all, every single person, every single baby, every single animal that is being killed, every single tree that's being killed, every ocean, every piece of water that is being polluted and killed. We are all of it because we're all part of the one. We are part of nature. We're not separate from her. We're not separate from each other. We're all individual beings, but we're individual aspects of the one being. And once we can see and hold that in our hearts, it empowers us to be able to stand up for all of it and not feel like we'll be drained, not because we know that that all of us are all together, that even Mother Nature is with us. That when we defend Mother Nature, we're defending ourselves. And the one thing that connects us all is our love. I always talk about this amazing woman who sits on the bottom of the ocean and the shark queue up to sit on her lap and get cuddles from her. The sharks that we've been taught are the enemy, the sharks that want to eat us and kill us. They're the sharks that sit on her lap and close their eyes and go into complete state of bliss at being cuddled. And time and again, nature, dogs, cats, dolphins, lions, just all these animals show us that they respond to love. We don't have to know Swahili to be able to speak to somebody with our hearts. We don't have to be able to understand a chimpanzee to be able to connect with them with our hearts. Our hearts are generators of immense love and the people who sow hate and depend on hate incitement know that our love is connecting us across the planet. What's happening today across the planet for the climate, for Palestine, these things aren't just happening all of a sudden. These things have been happening for a very long time. We're climbing on the shoulders of people who've been change makers for centuries. And we're connected through them. When we listen to our hearts, we can hear our ancestors speaking to us, guiding us. We can hear the future generations too. Once we listen to our hearts, they're asking us what they need. And once we listen to our hearts, we're connecting to all of it and we're empowered by that love. And through that love, and this is not sissy, namby-pamby, hippie love. This is really strong love that will stand up on the streets when the police are coming at us, when they bring in their tanks, when they start bombing us. People still have that love for their children, for their siblings, for their community. That love is something that no bombs can ever take away from us. And it's that love that those in power are just the few, we are the many, and they know that the many are rising. And this is why I love Phoenix so much, because Phoenix has been talking about this and bringing our resistance and our connections and the movement of movements, and helping us to see that the people on the front line of this change are the people who've been hit the hardest and the longest, the people who've been colonized, and this includes women, it includes children, it includes disabled people, disabled people in particular, because and disabled it's disablism is one of the isms that we don't talk enough about, and we don't recognize and think about. The ableism of this world is so powerful, and yet disabled people with disabled children, people with disabled elderly that they're caring for, or members of their community, are the ones that get hit first and hardest. The Ukraine war showed that really starkly, in that as people fled, the people with disabled children, the people with disabilities, were unable to flee. And it's this, something that this country is now actually increasing through COVID, through the cuts to care, through the cuts to the NHS. There's more and more and more people who are becoming disabled, and more that will become disabled, because once we're disabled, we're not seen as human, we're seen as subhuman, and it's easier to kill us off. It's with the Nazis. The Nazis started their cull and their experimentation on disabled people. The gas chambers that we hear of, those gas chambers were practiced and honed on disabled people before they were used on the Jewish people and everyone else. And it's that dehumanization of disabled people that allows us to accept dehumanization of everyone else. And once we start to see all of humans, all of humanity, all of life as precious, then we stop allowing anybody to be killed off in plain sight, let alone behind doors, let alone in our hospital corridors, let alone in our prisons, let alone in an open concentration camp like Gaza. I don't know if I'm making sense about all of this, but
You're making absolute sense. It's deep wisdom. It's really important that people realise that the Nazis started on disabled people and travellers and the marginalised.
It's that marginalization, that othering, that dehumanization of any single one of us that then allows that to escalate into whole communities. And now, as with Palestine, an entire people. And yeah, my brain just goes in every direction. And while I've been getting ready for this, it wrote another poem. So if you'll humor me, I'd like to read it to you. It's probably not finished. I probably need to look at it again. But
we love your poem. Your wisdom is always
okay. This is about Palestine. And seeing the bombs being dropped at the same time as food was being dropped. Just the horror of it all. And so, yeah, I wrote this, so I'll just read it to you. Open the gates, tear down the walls, heed the children's screams and calls. Free Palestine, set its people free from the river to the sea. Stop all the bombs, end all the hate, open each checkpoint and gate. Free Palestine, set its people free from the river to the sea. Let the aid through, turn on the lights, let the babies sleep at night. Free Palestine, set its people free from the river to the sea. Hold Israel to account, charge them the cost for reparations, damage and loss. Free Palestine, set its people free from the river to the sea. Make Israel pay to rebuild each home and for each crime and life atone. Free Palestine, set its people free from the river to the sea. From the river to the sea, the people must be free. From the river to the sea, the people must have peace. From the river to the sea, Palestine must be free. Free, free Palestine. For trade routes, for money, for oil and for gas, for vengeance, for bloodlust and death delivered en masse, for power, for dominion and more wealth to amass. They murder, they rape, they plunder and take. They bulldoze and torment, they starve and foment hate. They maim and they torture and rejoice in the pain as they set out to annihilate an entire people. And the world watches in growing horror. And we rise up united to free Palestine. Free, free Palestine. Free, free Palestine. Join me in saying that wherever you are. Free, free Palestine. Free, free Palestine. I read that today.
Really powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's words of wisdom. Really moving. Thank you so much. I think it was it Nelson Mandela said that, you know, until we can find peace in South Africa, Northern Ireland, and Israel, Palestine, the world will not know peace. And thank you for sharing that. It's really important. Beautiful.
Yeah, I
need to realise all these campaigns and movements, and we need to help all these different causes as many parts of the petals of the daisy, as you say.
I'm looking at your picture, Habiba. Yeah, thank you.
I got that from the last one for the women of Palestine. We were there on Friday here in Enfield. So this is where I got this mandala one. Nelson Mandela. So, you know, meant to be. Because we're all talking about the same thing. Right, I'll go now.
No, that's brilliant. Thank you. But yes, so I don't know if you've seen me out and about, but one of my art installations is my chair that I've turned. My wheelchair has been turned into an art installation with lots of petals, with all the different causes on there, saying we have to have decolonization, we have to have human rights, we have to have animal rights, we have to have an NHS system, not just an NHS system for this country, but a health system, a universal health system for the entire world. There's absolutely no reason why we can't do that, but except those with money do not want to save lives, they want to end lives, especially now that we're no longer needed for cannon fodder, we're no longer needed as workers, and because they can automate everything, and they can use drones, so they don't need us. So basically we're all being turned into useless eaters. The disabled people were portrayed as useless eaters in the past, whereas now everyone is being considered a useless eater unless you're part of that elite circle. And we were sold the thing of, oh, industrialization will free people up, and then the computerization will free people up, and then AI will free people up. But each of these things, as they've come in, has just made the misery 100 times worse, and more people seen as worklessness being equated with worthlessness, and the moneyed elite being seen as worthy. We celebrate the top 100 richest people, but have no regard for the bottom 100 poorest people, and what misery their lives is because of the inequality. Poverty is the weapon of choice. They use bombs and everything else, but really poverty is the biggest weapon, the most destructive weapon, and the weapon not just used against the poorest people, but used to maintain the chains of the people in the middle, because everyone else is threatened with, if you don't work, you could end up being in the gutter like the workless people. If you don't toe the line, if you don't do as your bosses demand of you, so they demand more and more and more. They take away more and more workers' rights. And so what we really need to do is learn how to stand together for all of it. So I'm so proud of DPAC, because DPAC doesn't just stand up for disability rights and against the cuts and fight this government on those issues. DPAC has regularly come out with the RMT unions, with the doctors' unions, with the NHS, and understands that it is all connected and stands united.
Can you tell
us causes?
A bit of the history, Mary Ellen, of when DPAC started, and you've been doing some absolutely incredible actions, and
Yeah.
I read a bit on the website, and I know from the story from Occupy kind of times and things, and
Yeah.
Andy from DPAC telling me stuff. But yeah, share with people a bit of the
So
journey.
DPAC came together in 2010 in response to this government coming into power and starting its austerity and cuts. And so DPAC is Disabled People Against Cuts, because those cuts we recognized would result in death. So in 2010, DPAC was founded by Linda Burnett and others, and in 2010 they started to say that the cuts will kill. This will result in death. And the government and the papers and everyone else either ignored it or poo-pooed it and said we were just making it up. We didn't know what we're talking about. So in 2011, a Freedom of Information request was lodged with the government, asking them, so how many people are actually dying? You say no one's dying, but we think they are. So how many people are dying? And under Freedom of Information request, they had to respond. And they gave us the figures for 10 months of 2011, so not even the whole year. And that figure absolutely shocked me to the core, and it seared into my brain. I will never forget that figure, 10,600. They came back saying 10,600 people, disabled people, had all died, all dead within 6 weeks of being told that they were fit for work and left with no money. Now, these were people who might already have died in that period, but they were left with no money. Their last 6 weeks of their life made absolute hell, trying to fight for their rights, worrying about how to feed themselves, how to pay their rent, how to pay their bills, when the last 6 weeks of their life should have been made as gentle as possible and given time to say goodbye to their families and set their affairs in order. Instead, they were busy and kept busy fighting. These were people who were pushed so hard that they committed suicide. These were people whose health conditions were not expected to plummet, were not expected to leave them dying within 6 weeks. But the worry and the stress and the lack of food and the lack of medicine, the lack of heating, pushed them to death. 10,600 in that 1 year. And when they realized what a shock it was, even though the media was not reporting on it, those that knew were shocked into trying to do something about it. And so the government decided that they wouldn't keep separate figures. And we were told, don't bother asking again, because we won't have the figures to give you, because we won't keep those figures. So we've had to get piecemeal. The Guardian managed to get some, Deepak's managed to get something to do with ESA or something to do with DLA or something, but something to do with austerity or something to do with, so like the BMJ, for example, they did a study into the health and social care cuts, so just aspects of the cuts, and they did that investigation and found that 120,000 people had died just from the health and social care cuts. The IPPR did another report, and in that they found that another 130,000 had died just from austerity cuts, and not austerity, but just one aspect of austerity, cuts to preventative medicine.
Sorry, what's the IPPR? If you could explain that, and then maybe a little bit on the text out. You sent something about the report, which is being followed up with another inquiry.
Somebody look up. My brain's gone dead on that. I know they're the IPPR.
Okay, somebody from Deepak can probably help there. There's a report in the text that we sent out to a lot of people. There was some stuff. If you want to say anything about Ellen Clifford's book about the war on disabled people that you said was very good, and also there's a report which is being followed up with another inquiry next week about the UN CRPD report, and it's on Parliament's website. Anything you want to say on that?
Armed with the figures that we had from the Freedom of Information request from other places, armed with that and armed with all the individual stories, Deepak was able to get the attention of the United Nations. And so for the first time in the history of the United Nations, in the first time in the history of the world, the United Nations sent a team of investigators to conduct an inquiry into what was happening to disabled people and their human rights in this country.
Wow, well done. Amazing.
So they came, they interviewed MPs, they interviewed councillors, they interviewed the press, they interviewed families, they interviewed individual people who were being hit by these things, and they went away and they wrote their report. And when they wrote their and when the United Nations writes up a report, it's incumbent on that country to actually publish it. So this country met that obligation, but what they did was they sat on it for months, waiting for a really good day to publish really bad news. They published that historical document because it's for the first time in the history of the world and the UN, a country had been investigated and a country had been found guilty of grave and systematic human rights violations of their own disabled people. So that being a document of such grave importance, the whole world should have been looking at it. Instead, the whole world was looking across the water at Donald Trump. So it was during his election that this was published. It's on the government's website, but no one knows that it exists. So to all intents and purposes, it has been brushed under the carpet. So one of my first art installations that I've been taking around the country is called Invisible, and it talks about how disabled people are being made invisible through killing us off or cutting out care and leaving us housebound or being pushed into social care, into care homes, but also the report into these violations of our human rights. That itself is invisible. And so what we need is to shine our light on all of this. And when we shine our light on these atrocities, on these human rights violations, on the genocide, on the democide, on the ecocide, once we start shining our light, there's nowhere these people can hide anymore. This is when we can get that system change that we need. This is where we can get the movement of movements together and unite the entire planet for all of it. And so thank you, Phoenix, and thank you, Andrea, thank you, Neil, thank you, Roma, thank you to all of you individually. Together, we're one. individually we're doing our little bit, and sometimes when we're doing it and we don't see what's happening around the world, we wonder, does it matter? And it does. Every ocean is made up of drops of water. What each of us does, whether we can even get out of bed sometimes, is an issue. But if we can do something, speak to someone, share one tweet, share one post, support and like somebody else's, even if we can't get to an action, taking those the videos and footage of those actions and sharing it makes a difference. And together, I really believe we can be that change, and we are being that change. And that change has been coming for centuries. We're just at the front of that wave that has been growing. That tsunami of change is here. We are on the cusp of enormous positive change. I really, really feel it. I'm completely overwhelmed with the grief of the planet, the grief of Palestine, the grief of my own mother who's just died. But I'm also so conscious of all the positive change that's happening. And we need to hold on to that. And we need to keep sharing that, share the positivity, because when we're broken by the grief, by the pain, by the inhumanity against us and others, it's hard to stand up and speak up and keep shining our light. But when we hold on to each of these little wins and know that they're part of a tsunami of change, then we can change it all together.
Absolutely beautiful, really, you know, such inspirational words every time, Mary Ellen, that, you know, you are on the cusp of change, and, you know, we need to all unite together across the whole spectrum, really, isn't it, to create system change. I've posted a few things in the chat there from the different reports and chats, and some of the things you mentioned, and some others to pop ones in. Do you want to say a little bit about the action that was on the Canary when we were networking out the Canary's report, the 4th of March? You did an action, and then
Yeah,
maybe take some questions a bit, or whatever else you want to say.
Yeah, thank you for reminding me about that. Yeah, on Deepak, with the COVID and with all the changes in the laws and the attacks on our right to protest, it has made Deepak step back a little bit from the direct actions that we were so known for, including a direct action right in the heart of Parliament. But with the threat of changes that are, when we've already got hundreds of thousands of disabled people dead, with the current change in the welfare that this government is talking about, and not just this government, even Keir Starmer is talking about, hundreds of thousands more disabled people will die. Hundreds of thousands more non-disabled people are going to die. The people that they're impoverishing, the people that they're leaving hungry, millions of people in work are needing food banks, are homeless and struggling. And that the situation is going to get so much worse. They're going to increase the sanctions, the rate of sanctions and the length of sanctions. And sanctions means no money. And as a result of this, Deepak did a national day of action on the 4th of March to sound the alarm and to get people aware of what's going to happen, what's coming, what's happening already. And I was at that, and I was so proud to be part of that. There were actions across the country. The main action was in London. And that action was the start of the actions that we need to happen across now, because the budgets, the next elections coming up, when we've got both the Tories and Keir Starmer's Labour, and I'd like to really make this differentiation between true Labour and Keir Starmer's Labour, but also to realize that we're stuck in a system, a first past the post system, which doesn't give us proportional representation. And so until that's changed, every person who has not been voting needs to use their vote to change, at least within this system, the number of people that vote, and to vote for people who actually stand up for human rights, actually vote for a ceasefire, and not piecemeal support when it suits them and their political agenda.
That's a great point, Mary Ellen. Just to say, we're going to have a few webinars on, you know, future election organising and things.
Yeah.
But maybe do we want to see if a few people want to give any questions or feedback or anything for the last bit? You want to say anything else? Then we'll go to questions.
I was just wondering if Nikki Myers or Neil would like to say something, because they both have such phenomenal experience of direct action and the disability rights movement, as well as climate, as well as for climate change and justice.
So guys, unmute yourself if you want to say something, and then mute again because Rona's got some sound issues. So if you want to ask a question, or the two people that Mary Ellen just mentioned, if they want to say something, and then if you've got a question, you can stick your hand up in the reactions, or just any feedback or something you want to say. Really inspiring, Mary Ellen. Thank you so much. Every time, deep Buddha-like wisdom on many dimensions. Neil.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for that. I recalibrated myself, Mary Ellen, with your words. You know, it's good to have light minds, you know, because it just seems crushingly, it just seems crushingly at the moment, you know, and it's good to have conversations with light minds that, you know, you kind of realize, you know, you're not the problem. You know what I mean? There are the problems out there, or the problems being imposed on us, and this kind of this notion that shit, I've gone like big. It's just me. Hold on, how do I get rid of that? Don't want to look at my face.
I've done that. I'll remove it. Okay, carry on.
Yeah. It's this slide, this kind of acceptability that suddenly genocide is okay. We're going to look, you know, it's this kind of slide of acceptability as what is acceptable within our culture, within society, you know, and what we're being told. And there are other things, obviously, but you know, it's a rejection of that. And also, like with us Generation Xers, with a foot in the 20th century, you know, and the history and what we learned in the 20th century, as we sort of get a bit older and long in the tooth, and, you know, get towards the 70s and 80s, whatever, and then, you know, you drop off the end eventually. You know, it's like remembering what happened in the past, you know, in the 20th century. There was a lot of lessons that were learned, you know, there was a lot of people died. You know, some serious, and that's how the UN Declaration of Human Rights came out, and we're being told to ignore all this stuff, you know. Yeah, and it's kind of it's an unreality in a way. It's kind of slightly mad to look at the world at the moment. It's just like screamingly horrible, and, you know, and disabilitating in the sense that you're just stunned by it, like you're in the headlights, you know, of society's headlights, and you're in the middle of the road and you don't know whether to get out of the way or what, you know. And knowing what you can do within that context is a real question, you know, how, you know, and also the way it kind of impacts on your life, the terror of going up against the system, and and the media that's completely complicit and just ignores everything you do. So you have to look at our alternative media as the way on earth. Ricky's here somewhere. Hi, Ricky. And the alternative media. Do you know what I mean? To put the word out. Yeah. Sorry, I could rabbit on, but all I'd like to end on is say thank you, Mary Ellen. You've recalibrated me. We are the same ones. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Beautiful, Neil. Maximum respect for all your activism, for the cinema, to the Charlie Chaplin, to the front lines. Lovely to see you, and all wisdom. Brilliant there. Rona, and then Nikki, and then George. Rona, you want to unmute?
Hi.
Mute if you've spoken, so that it's better for Rona, I think.
Hi. Thanks for asking me to speak next. Just have a question though before I say what I have to say. What did you mean about Neil and Charlie Chaplin? I got a little confused there.
Neil does this great action where he dresses up as Charlie Chaplin, and I always see on Facebook Charlie Chaplin being arrested by a lot of police who seem to be big Charlie Chaplin fans. They always seem to be loading him in and out of vans. And he seems to be blocking the traffic a bit, and it's brilliant. Right.
Yeah, I've seen Modern Times, I've seen The Great Dictator, and one of his lesser-known films is called Monsieur Voodoo, where he plays a character based on Bluebeard, the mass murderer. He murders 14 women for their money, and he makes a fantastic speech, which basically leads very neatly into the point I was going to make. Chaplin makes a fantastic speech as Monsieur Voodoo about capitalism and about how being a mass murderer of 14 women is an amateur by comparison to governments who murder people through war and through policies and sanction it and adorn it with gold braid, and yet they get away with it. But because he's one man killing people individually for money, he says, as a mass murderer, I am a mere amateur by comparison. So I'm so pleased that Neil dresses as Charles Chaplin, because that is a great character to dress up as when doing civil actions, because the tie-in is very, very strong. And my point was that I'm not in my 70s or 80s. Just approaching my 60s, but I do remember the 20th century, and yeah, things didn't seem as bad as they are now. We had fairer policies back, even in the Thatcher era, we had fairer policies. We had the Independent Living Fund, and that's been eroded. But my point is that it's been neoliberalism, which is the kind of extreme, almost neo-fascist form of capitalism, which has been our gold standard since the Thatcher era. Even Thatcher wanted to leave us alone, and that sort of got eroded over the years. But it is neoliberalism and neoliberal policies that make us, somebody used the phrase useless eaters. I mean, I wouldn't go that far, but it makes us makes life less worth living for disabled people. And what I would basically say is that I think as long as we keep in our hearts that it isn't us, it isn't actually down to anything that reflects on who we are as people, that it's down to the system that we're being forced to live under, that actually makes our lives, I suppose hellish would be a word I'd use. I actually believe that maybe years ago, the Cathars were a sect of people who believe that we are in hell right this minute, that this is hell. And I actually believe to a large extent that for a lot of people, the Cathars theory was correct. My own life, I'm not going to go on too much about myself, but yeah, I've had moments when I really did not want to live. And I said in the chat that if I felt that my life is genuinely worthless, I wouldn't continue living it. And Andrea said, well, please, don't kill yourself. And yeah, I'm not planning to kill myself anytime soon, but we do need to hold in our hearts that it is our political system that makes us, feel the way we do. And I think we need to look beyond that and recognize and be a little bit more self-aware and recognize our own self-worth, recognize what we could bring to the table as human beings, as individuals, and not necessarily kind of like be bogged down by the system that oppresses us even more. We have to recognize and remember our own self-worth. That's what I want to say.
Brilliant. Yeah, it's really important. We need the whole system to change, and that's a lot of the problems there. I think the phrase useless eaters came from the Nazis, actually. That was one of the phrases for all sorts of peoples that they didn't like. Nikki, over to Nikki. Thank you, Rona. Bless.
Just a few things. I really love the wide lens that Mary Ellen has when she talks about these issues. And I first became aware of Neil's action when he was trying to raise something that I've been shouting about for years, which is that the UK government has no plans for disabled people when it comes to extreme, like climate related emergencies. Like, we do not figure in the emergency planning at all. There's not one single mention. So this is why I love the work that the climate emergency centres and other kind of mutual aid type organisations are doing, because government are not going to save us in this and other situations. It's people helping people who are going to come to each other's rescue, I think, in the coming decades. And just a little bit about my own activism. I was arrested once in London for needing a carer. So there was a section 14 or something in place, and I was sitting outside New Scotland Yard. And I thought, I'm going to run out of oxygen. I need someone to whiz down, turn it down a little bit so I can stay here longer as a one person protester, because the Met Police had broken up our very small, very quiet group of disabled protesters. And as soon as that person came and joined me, we became an illegal group of protesters. So yeah, we were surrounded by about 30 cops and then carted off to different police stations. And I really wish they'd have not dropped the charges, because I wanted to challenge that in the law, because that is just absurd. Some people do need a PA or a carer with them, and that's just, they should not be counted as two people, you know. But I've really enjoyed this this evening. Thank you, everyone.
Maximum respect, Nikki. We heard about that one. I can't remember where I was on some action, but we heard about that one, the DPAC posse outside Scotland Yard, and that they tried to pick someone on the carer thing.
That was our Disabled Rebels, because we
XR Rebel
30 grand on access equipment to make it the most accessible action ever, and the police took it all out the warehouse. So we were like, nah. We got an apology, didn't get the stuff back, but we got an apology from the Met Police, the person directly under Cressida Dick, as it was then, and they got a massive bollocking. But yeah, it was worth it. And then there were 2 more actions after that, and I managed to get a lock-on tube underneath, like my power chair goes up and down, and I managed to wedge a lock-on tube in the bit where it comes down, and had 2 people outside me, and we blocked the entrance to New Scotland Yard a few days later. That was really fun, because it was right next to an oxygen canister, and they really struggled to cut them off.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. It's lovely hearing the tales of frontline direct actions. Anyone else wants to say any comment, feedback, or question? Just to chuck a quick bit in while people are thinking. Stick your hand up if you want, or put something in. But you know, we really need to change this whole system. You know, everyone in society value for the knowledge and wisdom they bring.
It's me next, isn't it?
Yep.
Okay.
Who else? If somebody wants to stick their hand up or say something, go for it.
Poor Gio, I had my hand up, but then I took it down when you said,
Yeah, go on, George, go for it.
You've forgotten me, you rotter. How was that picture then?
No, you took the hand down. I was going to try.
Yeah, no, so what I do is I have another computer there. How could you turn that stupid thing off? That's Phoenix is on Private Eye. Oh yeah, you're page 3 of Private Eye. I assume it's you. But I used to get The Guardian every Saturday, and I'd read almost every word of it apart from the football. And by the next Saturday, I just about finished it, and it was really good for firewood, lighting fires. But now I get Private Eye, and it's just come through, and it's got a page in it, MD, who does about medicine and the NHS and the COVID and statistics, and it is really in just one page. And what he was saying about how many deaths it was, he actually does the maths properly, and they've counted excess deaths. They count how many in a normal year were expected to die at this age, and how many died with COVID, and how many of the ones with that. And they do, and he explains it simple enough to sort of understand. And it was like the vaccine was, but without it, about twice as many people died. Anyway, so there's all of that private eye advert there on page 3 of Phoenix. How do we turn it off? So then, someone said neoliberalism, which got me thinking about the neoliberals are like the right of the Tory party who think money should control everything, and they're against having a welfare state. Whereas, turn the volume. How do you turn that off? There, yeah. They're against having NHS and things. It should all be private. And it's just a bit annoying because the liberalism is quite the opposite of that. All the parts of the, I'm in the Lib Dems, there's parts of the Lib Dems who are called the social liberals, who have the disabled. There's probably got a separate disabled group. Then I'm in the Green Liberals, so we think the Green's more important, and we have our little meetings. And then Orange Book, Clegg was a bit of a, and then in the Labour Party there's the same things going on. But then the Conservative, the difference between people saying not to vote, because Starmer and Sunak are just sort of straight lawyery type people. But if you look at the backbenchers, the people who are behind them, the average Labour backbencher compared to Tories are quite different, and the poor old Liberals, who hopefully can knock off some Tories. But then there's the Green Party as well. They should all be in the same alliance with a stupid voting system. So that's that one. Disabled, anti-Semitism. Oh yeah, anti-Semitism.
That's good points, George. I think we're going to have some election ones coming up. We're in the last 5 minutes or so. Mary Ellen's got a hand up. Hold that one up. How many people
I'm suspended.
Change things.
I was going to tell you about me being suspended, but because
we're coming towards the end of time, George. You want a very quick one? Or
I'd love to see that.
You have to know what Semitism is, or you get in. I got caught, someone accused me of anti-Semitism, and that means I can't do anything for months while it's all investigated, apart from resign.
All right, that's a very big, long, and complex one, George. I don't think we can go there right at the moment. Mary Ellen, I think this is a webinar. Let's come over to finish. Thank you, George. That's good.
Go on, shut up, George.
Interesting stuff, but. Mary Ellen, do you want to? I also wanted to check with Ricky, who's probably covered a lot of these various actions and DPACs, if he wanted to say something. And we'll roll on for another 5, 10 minutes or so, 5 minutes or so if necessary. But Mary Ellen, did you want to say something there? Over. And welcome, Lilith. You have to unmute, Mary Ellen.
Yeah, I was just saying. Do you want to let Ricky say something first? And then I'll come back because I've made some notes about. I want to be able to reply to some of the points that were raised.
I'll just hello. Just really quickly. I'm cooking at the moment. I'm listening. I'm loving what I'm hearing because you're such beautiful people. Just want to say big respect. I've covered some of your protests. I'll keep in touch. I want to just. The more difficult it is to protest, the more important it is that I reveal in the way that I can some of the stuff that's going on that our corporate and mainstream media don't touch. But yeah, huge respect for everything you have done, and just keep fighting, and I'm with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, thank you for everyone's comments and feedback and talk about what you've done and doing, and it's you've reminded me of a couple of points that I hadn't mentioned, and that's coming back to the love, the thing that the universal love, the ability to just keep giving out love. No matter how much we give, there'll be more. But that reminds me about the language that we use, and to be really aware of the language that is being used and the language that we ourselves use. So when we use the word fight, we're falling into the thing of the warmongers language. And so how instead of fighting something, changing something, being the instruments of what we want to see, not what we're trying to stop. And language is so important. I mean, for example, we had the Department of Health and Social Security. In that name, it let people know that the government had a responsibility to provide health and social security. They changed that to the Department of Work and Pensions. And in that, they made pensions into a benefit, not a right, not something you've actually paid for all your life, and suddenly it's theirs, not yours. You've got to, and the language matters so much. And if we start to become more aware of the language we use and refuse to fall into the trap of using negative language and only using positive, we start to change the whole energy around the planet, not just around us, through those words we choose. The mention of the different parties brought me back to the importance of people's assemblies and taking back the power from the idea of governance. We need people had governesses for their children. You needed people who needed somebody to guide them and show them and look after them and provide for them and protect them and teach them. We don't need that. We're adults. And even the children, we don't need to be controlled. And we don't, the planet's resources don't need to be in the hands of a few who decide what they're going to do with it or how they're going to destroy it, actually. We need to take back the power from those in power, those who are not just in power, but abusing those positions of power that we have given them. Because whether we voted for them or not, we pay our taxes and our taxes pay their wages. And when you pay someone's wages, you are their boss. And as their boss, you have a duty, a right, and an obligation to keep an eye on what they're doing, to make sure that they don't do anything that we don't want them to do, not in our names. And when they spend so much, they spend trillions on war and killing, when just mere billions is enough to make sure nobody is left hungry, no one is left homeless, no one is left needing medical treatment, no one is left without. We are part of nature, and nature provides in abundance and unconditionally. And that's how it needs to be. We need to provide for everyone unconditionally, no question of, are you more worthy than another? They divide the deserving poor and the undeserving poor. No, let's get rid of poor. There is no need to have anybody poor in the first place. And pitting one against the other. The latest is now that they want to scrap national insurance contributions because the workers shouldn't have to be paying national insurance contributions for those workless people, and not telling them the truth. The truth is you're paying not for those workless people, you're paying for yourself, you're paying for your pension, you're paying for your NHS, you're paying to make a good, just, well provided for, socially secure society. So when they cheat somebody and don't give them their benefit entitlements, they're cheating all of us. They're in breach of contract with all of us. This country runs on contract law. Through that contract law, we need to take them to court for breach of contract when they've sold up our NHS, breach of contract when they cheat anyone of their benefits, breach of contract when they close down a school or a library or a swimming pool, breach of contract when they use our money to go and commit genocide, when they use our money to give new contracts and to the fossil fuel industry and the building industry. So we need to understand our power, understand we are the employers of these people. We pay the wages of the army, the navy, the police, the prime minister. Once you know that you are that powerful, once you know, then you understand why they're so scared of us, why they're trying to change the laws to try and stop us from rising, because they know this is the time. We're on that cusp. The time for that change is now, and they're so desperately trying to amass everything they can because they're so scared. They're scared of us. We need to know that. We need to be able to have that confidence to rise up and unite for all of it and connect through all of it with love, even with them, and know that 100% of us move forward or none of us move forward. We don't need a revolution, because a revolution is going round in the same cycles of abuse. We need an evolution. We need to let love be our guide and empower us to use the right language, the right actions, and move forward for the good of all. I love you all. Thank you so much for inviting me, Phoenix.
You're one of my gurus. Absolute deep words of wisdom from the Buddha of Deepak there. Mary Ellen, you just have such wisdom. That is amazing. And, you know, we got to change this whole system. While you were talking there, I was just thinking, we live on an abundant planet. There is enough on this planet for everyone to have food, shelter, abundance, happiness. It's just that there's a 1% trying to take it all from the rest of us. And we need to change the entire system that we, you know, that surrounds us. We need to better organize it for everyone. Couldn't really sum it up better than you've already done there, Mary Ellen. So that's amazing. Anyone want, you know, put some words in the chat about what you thought tonight, or say a few words? I think we should wrap it up there. Really, we usually stick to it now. That was amazing, Mary Ellen. That's amazing. Thank you so much. Absolute inspiration. You really bring all the petals of the daisy together. We've all got to work together across all of our movements to bring about change and create system change very quickly. Any other quick ones from people? Anyone who hasn't spoken? Anyone wants to share? And we'll just say your parting comments in a few words.
Hey, it's George here again. What I like to do when the meeting's over, just leave the Zoom on, because then it's like anyone can interrupt, and it's like you're having a cup of tea at the meeting afterwards. It's like in a real meeting, you have the meeting's over, end of meeting, but you then start to talk about.
Good call. I was thinking about that. We'll leave it on for 15 minutes after we stop recording. Anyone who wants to hang around and chat, you're fine. Any other quick comments from anyone? I'm going to stop the recording.
Yeah, stop the recording. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Mary Ellen.
Oh, thank you. And could you save the chat for me so I can see the links or any comments, because I haven't been able to read them while we were going. Is that okay?
I'll send it and save it to you. I'll save it and send. I'm going to stop recording just there, and we can stay on, those that want to. Right. Thank you so much, Mary Ellen. Big up Deepak and all of the you know, disabled rebels who are making change, at everyone from every movement of movements that has come together across this planet. Let's create system change, set up a climate emergency centre near you. Check out the chat and join one of the chat groups, and let's keep networking. Thank you, everyone.
Recording is still on.